thinking of making the line. I'm going to state for the record that some of you aren't going to like this. The tagline for all my podcasts. I have to admit that for most of my coaching career, my philosophies on technique and training have been out of vogue in the sport. But then again, every few years, I get to be cool again. For a while, anyways, and have others agree with me. This is the Swim Coach Dad podcast, and today we're going to talk about training.
I go swimming. I go swimming. Swimming in the water. Swimming in the pool. Swimming is cool. I go swimming.
Welcome back to the Swim Coach Dad podcast. I'm Victor Coach Scott Wisner, and today's podcast is titled Victor is a Distance Program and Other Training Myths. Training is a topic that books have been written about, so this isn't going to be comprehensive, but more of a review of our training methods and philosophy. We can get into it more, but honestly, it'd be like a 3-day podcast. I have to admit that there are other coaches and parents out there who really make me laugh when we talk about training. You know, one of those full body laughs. You see coaches and parents and even swimmers continually comment to me about how we're a distance program and we only train for distance events. Of course, that's usually followed by a comment about training too much or we swim too much distance in practices. We have articles sent to us by well-meaning parents about how other sports train or how other teams train, and we have frequent conversations about how much yardage we're swimming. I usually chalk that up to failure to understand what distance program really is. But to clarify this idea of why we're not a distance swimming program, and as a matter of comparison, keep in mind that serious distance swim clubs in the U.S. are doing, with their top groups, something around 9 to 11 practices a week. We're doing about 6, maybe 8 if we can get in for a couple of mornings each week, and that's under normal times. We try to be something around 40,000 to 45,000 yards a week for the senior groups, something around 30,000 for the senior prep groups. The distance programs like NCAP, Sandpipers of Nevada, Mission Viejo, and others, they're doing more like 60,000 or more a week, 80,000. We heard one group that was doing 80,000 right now, and a lot more often than just 1 week. They're doing it every week. So by comparison, we're far from being a distance program. To show where I've been, I came through senior swimming and college swimming at a time where training yardage was at its peak. In my swimming career, I was swimming 11 workouts per week as a high school swimmer. That was 5 mornings, 5 afternoons, and a long Saturday practice every week. I averaged about 5,000 to 6,000 yards in 90 minutes in the mornings and 7,000 to 8,000 yards in 2 hours in the afternoons. So, and on Saturdays, most weeks we got in about 8,000, so we were something around 68,000, 72,000, around there. And that still wasn't that much. I was doing 20 hours of training per week, and compared to Mission Viejo, Gotham Aquatic, De Anza, Randy Reese Swim Club, Long Beach Swim Club, Burnell's Gators, and others who were really top in the distance events, this was really far less than the top programs were doing. In college, as a distance swimmer, I swam 13 practices a week, 12 if there was a home football game when we had Saturday afternoon off, and we swam over 30 hours of training, and that actually did include weight practices, but about 30 hours of training a week during the regular academic school year. Most weeks we were over 90,000 yards, and during winter training trip, we would hit about 120,000 meters long course in any given week during those 3 or 4 weeks. In the early 1980s, Jeff Kostoff, now coach with the University of Minnesota, when he was in high school, he swam 30 times 1,000 on 10 minutes. And so, the training levels were very high in those days. I think that was probably in 1982 when he did that. I have some workouts written by Dick Schulberg when he was coaching at Germantown Academy and the Germantown Swim Club that are over 16,000 yards in one practice. Times have changed in the sport, and for colleges, training is limited to 20 hours per week. And we also have learned a lot more about training since then, we understand the benefits of giving athletes recovery time, and training has become more refined. All right, so I want right up front, we recognize that there are lots of different ways to train swimmers, and there are lots of different training methods that result in swimmers getting faster. But there isn't one right way to train. So this is just about why we train the way we do. In general, keep in mind that water is not our natural environment. We aren't swimming to school, swimming between classes, swimming part of our normal non-training activities. So while there are some who believe you don't need to swim that much, you do need to swim. At this point, our experience in the club swimming realm has been that training the way we do gives us overall better results in every training distance and stroke. We actually train for a meet rather than an event or group of events, and to get our swimmers ready for the next level. We'll cover what this means in a few minutes, but for now, let's just go on over the basic goals. So we cycle through practice types, so we're not doing the same kind of practice every day. With us being shut down for 2.5 months, it might seem like we've been doing only aerobic conditioning practices for the last 4 months. But normally, we don't want to do that much of one type of practice in succession during any given week. In the senior group, the ultimate goal is to have our swimmers ready to swim in college, where they'll be swimming 20 hours per week and where every dual meet is important. So we wanted them to get used to training around that amount of time. So with each group between developmental up to senior, developmental, intermediate, performance, senior prep, and senior, those are steps towards the next level. Developmental is leading up to intermediate. Intermediate's leading up to performance, and so on. We want to have swimmers working toward being proficient in multiple strokes and distances so they can be versatile all the way up the line. At a very basic level, the senior prep, senior national groups, to me, training for swimming is about 2 things. Being efficient technically as much as possible and pushing the body physically so that adaptation to higher work levels and stress happens. This also includes cardiovascular conditioning. And this process is true no matter what you swim. Sprints, distance, stroke, doesn't matter. We want you to be in cardiovascularly superior shape. Okay, so let's get into this idea of doing too much long swimming. The British Journal of Sports Medicine, and this is just one of several articles written on this topic, endurance exercise training enhances exercise tolerance and ultimately improves the performance of young athletes. That's a direct quote from the article. Research supports aerobic training in young athletes, especially pre-puberty. Okay, so I said before that we train for a meet, not an event. For our senior swimmers, that means training for a 3.5-day, 7-session championship meet with prelims, finals, swimming 6 or 7 events, 12 to 14 swims probably, relays, something between 10,000 and 25,000 yards over 3.5 days. And that takes a lot of training. I mean, to be able to swim well on the last day as well as the first day, it takes a lot of training. We also train for the range, as we say. That means training for a wide variety of events. But we've had a lot of people who believe we only train for the distance events. We train so that swimmers who are in the sprints are just as successful as swimmers swimming longer events. We don't just train for distance events, and to say so is just not true. Our senior swimmers train around the 200, 500, 200 stroke, and 4 IM events. We do the same with the younger groups, but in an effort to develop them to those longer events in stages. So we don't start them out by having them swim a 3,000 for time. We have them start out swimming something less than that, like 1,000 maybe, when they're at that level of performance group, for example. But we're always training for the next step. That's kind of the point. One of the most amazing things I've seen in swimming was a few years ago at Junior Nationals East in Columbus, Ohio. There was a swimmer from Carmel Swim Club who's actually a great swimmer at Texas now, Drew Kibler. And the first night of finals, he won the 500 free and the 50 free right off the bat. First night of finals. His swims were about 45 minutes apart. So we're always kidding his coaches, TJ Day and Chris Plum. You might know TJ's now the current coach at Star. And Chris Plum actually swam for Star when he was an age grouper. And he's been head coach at Carmel for a number of years. But we always kid him about only swimming 25s in practices. But clearly, if you have a swimmer that can perform like that, win the 500 free, and then 45 minutes win the 50 free, you're training for the range, as we say. Going 4:14 in the 500 and then 19:06 in the 50 as a high school junior takes more than just sprint training. I mean, they're doing some serious aerobic work. All right, I promised you last week that I'd tell you our sacred secret about training. All right, we want you to be tired at the end of practice, really tired. We want you to push your body so that you're still swimming properly and so that your technique hasn't gone downhill, but we want you to be very tired. And depending on what we're doing, there's a different kind of tired we want you to be. So some of you guys know that hard sprinting we do on lactate test sets or when we're doing a lot of speed work, that gives you that muscle fatigue that makes your arms feel like jelly. Then there's that tired that comes from those intense distance sets and doing longer sets training, that we do. And maybe even the some of the more combined sets where we'll do a 400 and then 4 100s after that or something like that. And there's that tired from those race pace sets where we're doing like 20 by 100, 20 times 100 at race pace, where you're tired in just about every way. Your arms hurt, you're out of breath, but we want you to be tired. If you aren't tired after every practice, we need you to step it up and push your body harder. We want to get that training effect that comes from working hard every day. And there's some days you're not going to swim well because you're tired. In the end, we want swimmers in our program to be successful in every facet of their lives. In the pool, in the classroom, and in life. We want them to be good people. And that comes from committing yourself and putting in good work, developing a good work ethic. Okay, some quick things we want to have our swimmers know for practices. How to descend a set properly. We want them to know how to swim a test set properly. We want them to know their best practice times for every distance and every type of swim, from like 50, 25, 50, 100 kick to the same for pulling, maybe your best 50 free time, your best time in the 3,000 distance test set, things like that. They should know everything so that every time they swim something in practice, they know what their goal time should be. We want them to understand the color system we use, John Urbanchuk's color system of white, pink, red, blue, purple, and know what their times are so that they know, okay, this is a red set, my 100 frees have to be 102, and be right on there, know where they have to be, because they're all based on heart rate, so they should know what that takes. And it changes, obviously, but there are some days where, for the most part, they're going to be right on, and other days they're going to struggle to make those. But we have to know, they need to know where they need to be on those particular steps. So, and we try to cover all the energy systems and challenge the body in various ways, and using the color charts allow us to do that a little bit more. We don't do yardage for yardage sake, especially in the senior group. We have a reason for doing all of our practices and sets. There's a friend of Mike's, Coach Mike's, who gets our practices every once in a while, and he'll make a comment that we're doing distance for distance sake, and that's not really what we do. In the senior and senior prep groups, we've found doing warm-up with fins is helpful in a lot of ways. First, it allows the legs to take some of the pressure off the shoulders early in practice. We also find that stroke technique can be focused more so on with fins, and when the arm's doing more of the correct movements and the legs keeping the body in position. We've tried doing a lot less with fins, but honestly, we continue to go back to it because we see the difference in swimming performance during the rest of practices when we do warm up with fins. In fact, some of our college swimmers have started trying to warm up in their practices with fins. So we use a variety of equipment to put more pressure on the body and work harder. But honestly, there's some things that we really have to watch out for. If somebody's got bad shoulders because of bad technique, they really need to be watching how much paddle work they use. We do like some of our swimmers using drag suits. We have some of them using them now, but certainly not as many as we did a few years ago, and like to get back to that. There's something I like. It's something personal with me because I've seen how it helps some of our swimmers. So I'd like to see more swimmers using the drag suits. I know some coaches like using kickboards, but I really don't. I know Coach Mike does at times. I like the body to be more of a natural position, and I also think that leaning on the kickboard can cause some shoulder problems because it's kind of an unnatural position to be in. That's not to say there aren't good reasons to use a kickboard, and some coaches use kickboards extensively, and they use them very effectively. Another reason I don't like using them is for this frequent, like a lot of times it's social kicking. It may be a harder kick set, but it turns into social kicking. So I don't know. That's maybe it's because I'm older and I don't appreciate social kicking. We do two kinds of test sets in the senior and senior prep groups. Both are progressive, and they involve longer and shorter distances throughout. We do a distance test set based on 3,000 yards. Start with 6 500s and work up to a 3,000-yard swim for time. And then we end up actually, the whole series is based on a 1650 at the end that we do as kind of a test to see if there's any improvement there. We also do lactate sets that are based on speed component, more rest, usually from a start. The sets are usually 500s or 400 IMs or stroke, and goes down to 200s, 100s, 50s, and then 25s in successive weeks. These are all with a step, each getting shorter, and so the sets actually get shorter, whereas the distance test sets all stay around 3,000 yards except for the last one. We keep track of the results of these so we can see the progress, and then we can also see when a swimmer's overtrained. But we also send them to college coaches when our swimmers head off to college. So it's really a good kind of a journal of how they've improved. But the one main point of those is we need to have honest effort on all these sets because, they're test sets. And so there are a lot of swimmers that immediately you hear distance test sets and they either miss practice or they shut off and don't want to do it. So it's important we get honest effort because that's really a gauge of how well we're training. We write workouts for the top swimmers in each group and make adjustments as needed so everyone gets a challenging workout. This is where the writing workouts to the middle of the group comes in. And we find that gives us mediocre results. Top swimmers in the group aren't challenged, and the lower part of this group, usually the newer swimmers to a group, are still struggling. So we find by writing the workouts to the top swimmers and making the adjustments for the other swimmers, we get better results. This is true all the way down the groups. We do a variety of training sets because swimming the same kind of sets over and over is not very interesting for the swimmers, and we need to challenge the body in a lot of different ways. We want to give variety to keep them interested in what we're doing, and we want to challenge, we want to make sure that they're tired in different ways. That's a simple way of saying it. So to summarize all this, we believe in solid aerobic training program where we're building the conditioning of our swimmers in every way, every day. We believe in cyclical training plan each week so that we don't do the same kind of training every day. We like to make sure we're pushing them, but we may do a lot of pulling one day and we'll do a lot of kicking the next day also. We want swimmers to go to a meet and feel they're in shape and that they can swim the whole meet well because they are in shape. They don't have to worry about getting too tired at the end of the meet. And sometimes, actually, a lot of our swimmers have their best swims at the end of the meet. Being efficient technically is a big part of it, and that's why those early age groups, the early groups are really important. The developmental, intermediate, and performance groups are super important because we want to make sure everybody's efficient in their technique. And then being trained properly once you have that great technique is really an important thing. We found there's no easy way to get best results. It takes hard work, and that's what makes swimming great. The hard is what makes it great. If it was easy, everyone could be a great swimmer. We've had some swimmers with limited talent who've been very successful because how they trained and how committed they were to what we were doing in practice. The key is to learn to love training. That comes from setting goals in each set and swimming with real purpose in practices. And there's nothing more motivating than having a championship meet or an end of the season meet when you've worked hard all season and you've really knocked it out of the park the last meet. This is Coach Scott Wisner of Victor Swim Club for the Swim Coach Dad podcast. Join us next week and we'll talk about stroke technique. Till then, keep swimming.